The store aisles lay quiet, broken only by the steady hum of the refrigerators lining the walls. It was the kind of silence that usually felt peaceful at closing time, almost like a reward after a long shift. But tonight, that silence felt wrong, heavy, like it was trying to say something. The young cashier, barely in her 20s, stood behind the counter organizing receipts when she suddenly felt the shift in the air. Not from the flickering lights above, but from something darker. The kind of darkness that comes from people moving with purpose, with intentions strong enough to make your chest tighten and your heartbeat lose its rhythm. She believed she was alone. She believed closing time was the safest part of her job. She had no idea that her worst fear was already walking straight toward her, or that help would come from a place she never expected, just a few aisles away. If you still believe kindness and second chances have a place in this world, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts. She had taken this job for one reason: to help her mother recover after surgery. Every shift brought her closer to paying off hospital bills that kept piling up. Every forced smile for a tired customer was another act of strength she didn't even realize she had. But tonight felt different. As the lights dimmed and the sky outside turned a deep, unsettling navy blue, 3 men stopped near the counter instead of heading for the exit. They didn't rush. They lingered. Their presence felt heavy, like a storm slowly pressing down on her chest. Their smirks cut through the quiet, and her stomach sank when she noticed their hands were empty. No food, no drinks, no reason to be there. The tallest one leaned over the counter first, stepping into her space with a confidence that made her breath tremble. She shifted back instinctively, but he moved forward even faster. The other 2 laughed sharp, loud sounds that echoed down the aisles like breaking glass. They mocked her, asked questions she didn't want to hear, questions she didn't owe answers to. And when she stayed silent, when fear froze her voice, they didn't back away. They stepped closer instead, growing bolder with every second. They started tugging at her shirt, deliberately pushing her boundaries, feeding off the fear they were creating, because men like them lived for that reaction. Her vision blurred as tears filled her eyes. She tried to blink them away, not because she was weak, but because she felt completely alone, trapped. The exit seemed impossibly far, like it had been moved just out of reach. Her voice cracked as she begged them to stop, each word shaking under the weight of panic. Instead of backing off, the men laughed louder, energized by the way her hands trembled. One leaned in so close she could feel his breath against her cheek. Another positioned himself to block her path to the back room. The third grabbed at her collar, forcing a gasp from her lips as she clutched her shirt closed with shaking fingers. In that moment, she felt small, powerless, certain that no one was coming to help her. Or so she thought. What she didn't know was that 2 bikers were still inside the store, moving quietly through the aisles near the back. They were the observant kind, protective by instinct. Not the bikers people feared in movies, but the hard-working, loyal kind. Men who carried their own scars and spent their free time helping local shelters and veterans groups. They had only stopped in 4 snacks, lingered longer than usual deciding what to grab, and then heard the raised voices near the front. They exchanged a single look. No words, just understanding. And then they stepped out from behind the shelves with a calm so steady it felt like the moment before an avalanche hits. The men tormenting the cashier were too busy laughing at her tears to notice the sound of heavy boots approaching. not until a long shadow stretched across the counter. A tall biker, broad-shouldered and wearing a worn leather vest, stood directly behind them in silence. The second biker moved to the side, cutting off the exit without a word. For one frozen heartbeat, time stopped. Slowly, the harassers turned around. Their laughter died instantly when they saw the biker's face. It wasn't anger. It wasn't rage. It was something far more dangerous, controlled, quiet fury, without raising his voice. Without raising his voice, the biker stepped forward, placing himself between the men and the shaking cashier. His body became a shield, solid and unmoving, a quiet wall of protection that said more than shouting ever could. The second biker finally spoke, his tone low but firm, telling the thugs they had exactly 3 seconds to leave the store. Nothing more. The silence that followed felt suffocating, thick enough to choke on. The men tried to laugh it off, forcing weak smirks, but their confidence began to crumble when the bikers didn't move, didn't blink, and didn't give them even the smallest hint of fear. Then the countdown began. 3, 2, and before the final number could be spoken, the harassers panicked. They scrambled toward the door like frightened animals, bumping into each other, tripping over their own feet as they fled into the cold night. The moment the door slammed shut behind them, the young woman's knees gave out. She collapsed into silent sobs, her body shaking as the fear she had been holding back finally poured out all at once. She tried to apologize between breaths, embarrassed by her tears, but the tall biker gently shook his head and told her she had nothing to be sorry for. Not a single thing. The other biker crouched down beside her, calmly gathering the receipts scattered across the floor. He handed them back with a quiet reassurance, telling her she was safe now. And for the first time that night, she began to believe it. That night, she finally felt her lungs expand without pain, her breath coming back slow and steady, her heartbeat easing into something that no longer felt like it might explode. The bikers stayed right there with her, not rushing, not hovering, just present, waiting until her breathing returned to normal. They even offered to stay until her ride arrived, making sure she wouldn't be alone again. She hadn't expected kindness from strangers, especially not from men, who looked intimidating at first glance, but what they showed her was genuine, warm, and fiercely protective. The young cashier thanked them again and again, her hands still shaking slightly, but her voice growing stronger with every word in that quiet moment. She realized something that would stay with her forever. Sometimes goodness comes from the most unexpected places. Sometimes it comes wrapped in rough edges, heavy boots, and leather vests, but inside are golden intentions. And as she locked the store doors behind her and walked toward her mother's car, she carried a powerful truth in her heart. Even in the darkest moments, even when fear feels overwhelming, there are people in this world who will step forward, people who will protect, people who will choose to be the light. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like the video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe for more emotional real-life stories.